we probably have the worst crop of world leaders in my entire life that I've ever seen.
You mean around the world?
Yeah, around the world. It's there isn't one of them that I would even want to sit down and have a drink with. Actually, um, they're
But are they put there on purpose? Is that the point? They're put there on purpose for this point in time so they can
I'm not
manipulate.
sure, but I wouldn't write that conspiracy theory off.
Are you struggling with bloating, fatigue, skin issues, weight gain? Well, almost everybody's struggling from weight gain, but rashes and just generally feeling like crap? One of the things that could be happening is your liver might not be operating properly. I've had many doctors on and healthcare professionals talking about why it's so important to detox, but your liver is a very key part of that. This is what your liver does. It filters and detoxifies. It removes toxins, drugs, alcohol, and metallic waste from the blood. It processes carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. It makes bile to digest and absorb fats and fat-soluble vitamins. It stores fat-soluble vitamins for later use. That's important. It helps break down cholesterol and metabolizes hormones. There's so many things that your liver does, from helping you detox to helping you get the vitamins into your body. If your liver is overburdened from trying to process all the toxins, which we are getting bombarded with, you are likely seeing a lot of these issues. It is a really good idea to be detoxing your liver on a regular basis. And I have a really good detox product called Ultra Liver. If you are interested in trying it, go to tryultraliver.com/Sarah. Again, tryultraliver.com/Sarah. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Martin Armstrong coming back to the program, one of the great minds that we have in the economic arena. And I hope you listen to this whole thing because there's some really deep wisdom that you can get from him based on his experience over the years. I asked him, would you be willing to advise Trump and the administration if they asked you to? And he would be, and he would give them a different perspective, or at least give Trump a different perspective, not tell him what he wants to hear. And perhaps maybe it would give him a different insight onto what's happening, because he has the data, worldwide data on what's going on with the economy globally. And even if he doesn't listen to them, getting access to that data and understanding what's going on worldwide, I think would be invaluable to President Trump. So it would be, I would advise to just talk to him. I think he'd do that. He wouldn't charge, he would just do that. He doesn't want to work for governments, but he would do that. And I think getting to that data would be critical. That being said, I think there's a lot of valuable information here for everyday people just to understand how, where things are going, especially if you are into finance and helping to figure out what your company is going to do or what you need to do to protect your wealth. I always say you want to go towards assets that'll withstand any kind of turbulence, and that is gold and silver, and actually diversify even into real estate and other things, that as things go up and down over time, those assets hold their value and they're not going to bottom out. And I really implore that you use somebody that you can trust in this industry with gold and silver. So many of these companies have been shown to be fraudsters, meaning they're going to charge you way higher premiums than you should be paying. So make sure that you not only talk to somebody that knows what they're doing, but they're not going to gouge you and scam you. That's why I like to work with Miles Franklin. You can trust them. And if you are interested in getting a hold of their private price list, or if you think that you have been scammed on an IRA, they can help you with that as well. Go to sarahwestall.com/Miles Franklin. Fill out that form. You can get their private price list, which is not public, or you can be helped on recovering funds from a scam that you might have gotten yourself involved with an IRA. Okay, do that. sarahwestall.com/Miles Franklin. Okay, let's get into this really good discussion that I have with Martin Armstrong. Hi, Martin. Welcome back to the program.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
It's always a pleasure to have you. Your insight is invaluable. You are one of the few that really looks at the economic data across the world and what that means to, in a tangible data, scientific way, based on how the money is moving, what's going to happen. What are you seeing in the Ukraine area? I know you just wrote an article about Ukraine and how it's more dangerous than people realize.
Yeah. You know, I'm not one of these guys that just hates Trump or supports. I just got to call the shots as they are.
Whatever the data says, right?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I was at dinner with Trump back in March of 2020 when he was president the first time, and he did impress me then. He said he wanted to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, but was the reason. He said he was tired of writing letters to their parents to say, your son died for God and country. And he actually said, what are we doing there? What difference are we going to make? They've been fighting over borders for 1,000 years. So I knew he was really against war. So I was warned about maybe a week in advance that he might be doing 180, backward flip on this whole Ukrainian stuff.
Why? Why?
Honestly, I think it's maybe twofold. I think he may think that doing this, he's going to really put the pressure on Putin to fold. Like in tariffs, I'm going to put a 200% tariff and expect some negotiation or something.
And it doesn't work, right? They just shift away from the United States, build better agreements with China and elsewhere.
Yeah,
and hurts us.
What he's done here with Ukraine and Putin, I think he's wrong, and he's taking advice from these neocons that actually, I believe, tried to kill him. Look, even assuming, let's say, Putin folds. Oh my God, I was wrong. What do you think would happen in Russia? When Khrushchev had to back down from the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was a coup. He was overthrown and Brezhnev came in. What if Trump had to back down and say, oh, gee, I'm sorry. Do you think he would be even acceptable to his magnet group? I mean, these things, when you're messing with the reputation, so to speak, of a head of state, you're stepping into really a quagmire here. And Putin is probably the smartest guy at the table. I have the declassified documents from the Clinton administration. Even Clinton said when he met him, he says, this guy's really smart. He is highly responsible. And what I mean by that is he doesn't act emotionally. And this is why Zelensky's tried to kill him, because they've done everything to try and get him to attack anything in NATO. Oh, if you give them long-range missiles, that's it. They do. He doesn't do anything. They invade Kursk. He doesn't do anything. Because he knows where this leads.
They're trying to bait him to attack a NATO country or NATO territory so that NATO will be forced to start World War III.
You can Google it. It's called Rally Around the Flag. If you want your people to sign up for war, you have to pretend you were attacked. That's what false flags are all about. Even FDR, he could not get us into World War II until he got Japan to attack Pearl Harbor. He froze all their assets, cut off their energy, threatened to put an embargo against them. And I even have on my site. I mean, it was the attack of Pearl Harbor was leaked. I had the front page of the Honolulu Tribune said we're going to be attacked this weekend. They knew it.
They had posters made. Did you know I met somebody who they had posters made that knew of the, okay, but anyways, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, he pulled the aircraft carriers out. and then pretended he didn't know. There was a big Senate investigation on this afterwards because it was such a conspiracy. And it came out that we had even broken the Japanese code. So they
What
said,
do you
well,
mean
we're
broke the
not
Japanese code? You mean we intercepted their
Yeah,
communication?
so we knew what
Yeah.
they were saying. So the committee, it was a Senate investigation, and they concluded, well, we're not entirely sure FDR knew personally. You know, of course not. They're not going to say he knew. It's just the way it is. It's the same thing with 9/11. They said, well, some agencies had the information, but they didn't share it. It's always the same, routine.
It's always you can pin it on incompetence and stuff, and just kind of
Yeah,
the
it's
bureaucracy, and we're just a mess.
look, they knew about 9/11. I mean, they're not going to stop it because once you get that, it got them a tremendous amount of power. They were able to start the whole war on terrorism stuff. We had to take our shoes off to get onto an airplane. You couldn't wire out more than $3,000, all because of 9/11.
The Patriot Act
And
went forward.
yeah,
And it's
just
still there.
yeah, it's still there. It's not going to go away. And so this is what you get. I mean, it's a standard routine. And look, with Ukraine, I mean, I put on our site, I have a video which they ended up taking off of YouTube, of John McCain standing there in Maidan, telling them basically to overthrow their government. This is about you and nobody else. This is about peace. Right. Okay. They overthrew the government. Where's the peace? 1.8 million Ukrainians are now dead.
It's
10 million have
always
fled the
about
country.
that. Yeah, it's always
it's always
peace.
bullshit.
Yes. So you wrote an article recently talking about how the acts of Zelensky, they spin him as if this is a democratic region, some kind of free press, or the way he behaves is a dictator thug. And talk about what he did to his opposition leader and some of your thoughts on whether he is even a legitimate president.
Well, I mean, we had employees in Kiev and in Donetsk. So I have, boots on the ground, as they say. Most believe that his election was all rigged anyhow, and that he really didn't win. But that's debatable. One person will say yes, the other person will say no. But he immediately went after any political opponent, just like Brazil's going after Bolsonaro, charging him with treason, whatever, throwing him in prison. I mean, this is what he did with the two of them. Even the EU came out and said, it doesn't look good. You should release this one guy from prison. I mean, the IMF has said, that Ukraine is the most corrupt country in the world. I was asked if I would advise the Ukrainian government years ago. And I said, they offered to pay me. Well, we can pay you in an offshore account. I said, no, thanks. Not interested. I never had a government offer to pay me money underneath the table, ever. Only Ukraine. Look, Ukraine is that whole Balkans area. People are ethnically divided. This is when Czechoslovakia broke up, it's Czech Republic, Slovakia. Ukraine broke up. Yugoslavia broke up. You got Serbia, Croatia, Armenia. And they hate each other. This whole region had been conquered by the Ottoman Empire. So you have Islam, you have Eastern Orthodox Christianity, plus you have Western, and they all hate each other. I mean, Zelensky going after the people in the Donbass, he's outlawed their language, can't speak Russian. outlaw the religion. No, Christmas will now be December 25th, not Orthodox in January. I mean, you don't do this to people. Can you imagine if Canada said we're going to outlaw French? I think they're going to have a revolution, Or we couldn't say, okay, fine, we're going to outlaw Spanish. You can't speak Spanish in the United States.
Well, in this period of time, they could have done that probably like 30, 40 years ago. But if you try to do that now, it would have been, yeah, it'd be terrible.
Look, that whole region, um, in Russia, the scholarly debates, who's really Russian?
That's right.
Stalin was from Georgia. Khrushchev basically drew the borders. He was, grew up there at, on the border with Ukraine. His successor Brezhnev was born in the Donbass. So
well, the Ukrainians, so they feel like they're more part of Russia, but now the Zelensky, what did he do to the opposition leader? I mean, they're throwing him in prison. They're doing they're trumping up. They're doing that to leaders all around the world right now, aren't they? I mean,
everybody's doing it now. They tried that with Trump. Then you saw, they're doing it in Brazil against Bolsonaro, in France against Marine Le Pen. Romania is now doing it. Pakistan has done it through the former president in prison. This is becoming a systemic problem. They're using the law, and I would suggest read John Stuart Mills from 1859. He wrote a book called On Liberty, and in there he talks about how corrupt the legal system was even then. And he said, we have yet to free ourselves from the stain of legal persecution. This is it. It's just come back full blown, and they're using the law to persecute people.
They've weaponized it. Yep.
Yeah, it is he's a criminal, so don't listen to him or something. Yeah, this is the nonsense that goes on, and it's just so corrupt. I mean, it's really disgusting. I mean, my father was a lawyer. I grew up believing in the United States and the rule of law, and I don't believe in any of it anymore. You got to see who's the judge, who appointed him, what's going on, who's paying him on the side. I mean, it's just ridiculous anymore.
Well, how much do you think the United States legal system is a bribery scheme compared to other countries? I know other countries like Ukraine probably is just all briberies, and there are some countries that are completely, no faith in the justice system at all. But how far has the United States fallen? How much are our judges just bribed and, controlled?
I would say certainly the two worst cities are New York and Washington. The lawyers, I mean, you can look it up, U.S. versus Zicatello. The judges up there in New York change the transcripts. They actually change what you say in court. All right. And I asked lawyers, how did they get away with this? Well, the judges, they passed their own rule. If the judge thinks it's irrelevant, he can change it.
Isn't that interesting? They can do whatever. I know
went up to the Court of Appeals. It's called U.S. versus Zicatello. Zicheetto. The Court of Appeals admitted that judges are committing a felony. If you or I change a court document, we go to prison for 20 years. Judges do it all the time. And the Second Circuit actually had the audacity to say, we're not sure we have the power to tell the judges to obey the law.
Jeez.
Who does?
Well, but see, what happens then is that people no longer want to spend the money to go to court, and justice just doesn't, there is no justice anymore because
Right.
It's like, why bother going to court? I'm going to lose anyways. It doesn't matter how well my case is. It doesn't matter that they stole from me or did whatever. I'm going to lose anyways. So why spend the money? And now we have no justice system.
Look, there's I asked one lawyer, I said, how come no bank in New York has ever been charged? His answer, you don't shit where you eat.
That's incredible. I
Well,
know that when I had a case in 2008, when I was suing this bank and whatever, all the fraudulent stuff going on in Minnesota, I'm from Minnesota, not a single bank was charged, found guilty of fraud in the entire decade before I went to court with them. Not one.
look, this is the way it goes. I mean, you know, Goldman Sachs is charged with fraud in Asia over the Malaysian manipulations and stuff. Never. Um, George Soros, I think, was charged in France. It's
Well, what
just
keeps
not
them
going to happen.
what keeps them from not committing fraud if they're never found guilty when they do?
Right? They know that they can do whatever they want, and they're not going to be prosecuted, and everybody knows it.
And if they are prosecuted, they win. Right? I mean, it's just,
This is what you know. They all have ganged up and tried to manipulate markets, like long-term capital management, whatever. All right, here that's a hedge fund. The Fed had to step in and bail out a hedge fund because if it went down, the banks went. So it's protecting the banks by doing that. AIG, with the whole mortgage back, it's an insurance company. That's not part of the Fed. They bail them out. Why? Because if we don't do that, Goldman Sachs goes down. Look, you had personally, I believe it was a conspiracy. Goldman they put in, Hank Paulson, so he's there in the Treasury. Magically, bails out. You're talking about they bail out AIG. They bail out long-term capital management, but they let two banks go down. Why?
yeah,
Because there were
why?
only 5 investment banks in New York, and the 2 they let go, they were competitors of Goldman.
Yeah.
The ones you're actually supposed to bail out, you don't. And then you bail out a hedge fund and an insurance company because that would affect Goldman.
Isn't that incredible? It shows who's in power. Now, who was the powers behind Goldman at that point?
It's just an entity that to be part of is like glorified or whatever. I don't know. It's not one individual. It's just a systemic system. This is it, and you take an oath and not to swear in, not to testify against them or whatever. Look, Goldman's very. I can tell you, you had Fibro, which was a big. They owned, part of Engelhard, big metals operation. They made a ton of money out of the 1980 gold rally. They then bought Salomon Brothers. And being a trader, I'm not an academic, so I've had my, I was there in the ring, and what they did was they would always manipulate the commodity markets continually. So they took how they do that to Wall Street when they bought Salomon Brothers. And what happens? They get caught manipulating U.S. government treasury auctions. That's when all of a sudden Warren Buffett steps up. Now, Salomon Brothers was the biggest bond dealer in New York. And Salomon, so Buffett stands up. I'll take the chairmanship. Don't shut it down. All right. So they let it survive. He takes the chairmanship, supposedly to clean it up. Gets involved in 2 big silver manipulations. Look, once the Salomon Brothers event took place, I believe what you can look at in the behavior of Goldman after that, they realized that they have to control government. Otherwise, they could come in and shut them down like they were going to do to Solomon because they manipulate the auctions. So all of a sudden, you see all these former heads of Goldman Sachs taking jobs, Secretary of Treasury, all this stuff. It was a reverse takeover of government. You had Rubin in there, and what did they do? They reversed, they repealed Glass-Steagall, which allowed banks to get back into trading and everything else. His former head of Goldman Sachs. And, being involved in Washington, I can tell you something people have no idea. To take that position, you can't have any conflict of interest. So you get to sell your stock in Goldman, maybe $500 million worth or whatever, tax-free, because you must take the job, so you have to divest everything else. So it wouldn't be fair if you paid taxes on it because we want you to take this job.
So it's a boon. You want to get these jobs so you can get the tax. You may just make 200 million or 100 million overnight.
You go in there for a couple of years. Oh, I have a headache. Sorry. I mean, just look at the list, and you'll see this is why the banks control government. Look at what goes on. I mean, they get caught with they made $1 billion on a trade. Oh, SEC goes in. They don't shut them down. Oh, we gave them a fine of $200 million.
Yeah,
that's their cut. That's it. We made $1 billion. Here's your 20%.
That's how you have to look at it, because they have an $800 million profit. The government's cut is $200 million.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is what goes on. SEC, CFTs, they've never, ever, ever done anything to any of the banks. All they do is, we fined them. They paid $200 million. That's your cut. That's it.
Well, are people starting to see through this now, though? I mean, we're seeing, especially in other countries, this country, we're really having some more of a social fight going on. I think a lot of it is distraction, but other countries are starting around the world. You're seeing people go to the streets, and you're like Nepal and the Philippines, and I think Australia. Was it Australia? There's, massive numbers of people in the streets, and people in the United States have no idea that this is going on worldwide.
Here domestically, they use the press to divide the people, and as long as the people are divided, left versus right, and all this, then you don't look at the government. And look, when Biden put the sanctions on Russia and gasoline prices went up, what did he say? Oh, it's Putin's inflation. You always have to blame somebody else. You never accept blame yourself. I've been dealing with governments for 50 years around the world, and I've lost any faith in humanity or whatever, but I've learned, for example, if I said, okay, fine, I'm going to run for Congress, vote for me because I saved your job, you're going to look at me and say, well, how do I know I would have lost it? It's better you lose your job than I say, vote for me, I'll get the guy that did it. This is government. They will never act to prevent something. All right, I became famous with the '87 crash. Why? Because I got called in '85. That was the creation of the G5, which is now G20. All right, and they were saying we're going to lower the value of the dollar by 40% to help trade. to reduce our trade deficit. And they're idiots. They don't, I'm a trader, not a theoretical academic nonsense. And I said, look, you do that, you're going to cause a crash within a couple of years. And they said, well, why? Because you sold a third of the national debt to Japan. And now you're saying you're going to lower its value by 40%. They're going to sell. They don't understand anything outside of dollars. So the 87 crash comes. At first, the Presidential Commission called me. They wanted me to come in. I said, not interested. Sorry. It's a dog and pony show. So they start calling my friends to lobby me to go in.
Wow.
I got a call from Jack Schwager. He says, Marty, if you don't do this, they're going to come take our computers, because they were calling, it's computer trading. So I said, all right. So I went in, and you can look at the end of the Brady Commission report. The best I got was at the end, they didn't blame computers. They were first going to say it was called computer trading, and ban our computers and that nonsense. So at the end of the report, I finally got them to look at it. It was a currency crisis issue. So at the bottom of the report, it says, we think foreign exchange had something to do with it, but, they would never blame the government. And so that was basically it. I said, look, just look at the capital flows. Japan dumped everything because they're going to lose 40%. Oh, okay. I mean, these people shouldn't even be in charge of government. I mean, it's
so. Is it better right now? Is it better right now with them knowing that the global financial system is fragile, resetting, whatever? Do we have better people in there now, or is it the same crap?
No, I think they're in. We probably have the worst crop of world leaders in my entire life that I've ever seen.
You mean around the world?
Yeah, around the world. There isn't one of them that I would even want to sit down and have a drink with, actually.
But are they put there on purpose? Is that the point? They're put there on purpose for this point in time so they can manipulate?
Not sure. But I wouldn't write that conspiracy theory off. It might be another one that comes true. It seems to be just so coincidental. You have a bunch of complete idiots. Macron, Stammer. I mean,
too stupid to be stupid.
There's nobody there with any intelligence. Look, back in the 80s and 90s, I would meet with heads of state. I've been good friends with Margaret Thatcher. She even spoke at one of our conferences and stuff. You can have an intelligent conversation with heads of state. I don't know any of them out there that I could say that would be true today.
That's a sad statement.
It is. Something seriously changed. I'm not sure. But I think what happened, because I was part of the vetting process, they would send me in to supposedly explain how the world economy worked to people who wanted to run for president. But it was really a vetting process. I get back. Do you think he's smart enough to handle it? That's the way it was up until 1999. Then I was asked, okay, fine, we want you to go down and meet Bush Jr. I said, yeah, okay, fine. And they said, no, this one's different. I said, what's different? He said, no, he's really stupid. And they used that word.
Wow.
And I said, what? I said, why would you make somebody stupid president? And that's when I saw it. They said, he's got the name, we can win.
They don't care.
They picked the cabinet, not Bush. They stick Dick Cheney in there. He was the real president. I was offered chief economic advisor. I said, no, thanks. I said, I own my own company. I'm not like Goldman, ever since then, that's the way it's been. Obama, not the brightest bulb in the box. When Trump got there, they were really upset the first time. They told him, we have to put a good cabinet in there to make sure, because you're not a politician, and we have to give confidence to the world economy. This is what he was told. Even General Flynn, you can look at his documentary. He says when Trump first got there, he was naive.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this time when he won, he picked his cabinet before he even got to Washington. That was a shot across the bow at the deep state. You're not going to do this again. Because the first time they stuffed Dick Cheney, Bolton, every one of them was stabbing him in the back. Dick Cheney just endorsed Camilla.
I know, isn't that incredible? Wasn't that incredible?
That was the final confirmation that she was just a diving head on the back of a car, that just bobbles around as the car's hitting the bumps. She'll do anything that's what Biden was. That's what they want. See, once the deep state, and by that I mean by the bureaucracy, once they got that taste of power with Bush Jr., they don't want to give it back. They don't want a president, any party. They don't want a president who is actually going to think he's the president and be able to do things.
So how dangerous is that? What does that mean?
It means that, this is how governments eventually fall.
Yes.
They become full of themselves. They think they are the power. You can read Thomas Paine's Common Sense, which sparked the American Revolution. In the very beginning, he says exactly that. He said, sovereigns think that, the government thinks that they are the sovereign, not the people. That they are the government, and we're just the slaves.
That's right.
And they get built up in their ego, and they don't care about what we think about. I mean, they tell us we live in a democracy, which we do not. Are we ever asked any important decision? Shall we go to war in Vietnam? No. Shall we go to war with Russia? No, we're not asked. Any of those things.
They don't even give the impression that they care if people die. They're not even trying. Yeah, they made that crystal clear during COVID that they don't care if you die. In fact, we'd rather have you die. You're out of our way.
Yeah.
That's the message they sent. Whether they believe it or not, that's the message they sent.
Look, I mean, if you die and they don't have to pay out Social Security, there's more money in their pocket. That's the way they look at this. It's never about the people. In the 90s, I was asked to do a plan to revise Social Security. I did. Okay, fine. I presented it. Couldn't get a Democrat to support it. Why? Because I said they wanted to turn it into a sovereign wealth fund, like a lot of countries have. I said, okay, fine. This is how we do it. People put in their track records. We allocate money out for them to manage according to their track record. Okay. Democrats said they wouldn't vote for it. I said, what's the problem? We want to change those fund managers if we get in. I said, I don't care if the guy voted for anything, or if he never voted, or who he voted for. That's not on the questionnaire. It's the track record.
It's not on the questionnaire. Exactly.
And it's like, what do I get out of it? That's why I became very pessimistic about government. It's like, I tried my best. I thought I would, when I was young and naive, I thought, okay, I'm given certain talents. I'll try and help the country. You can't. It's just
Well,
a bunch of bullshit.
it's a bunch of bullshit. But that's why the young people actually can make a difference, and us who've been around for a while end up not, because we say that. We come to that conclusion. It's hopeless. They go in thinking they can make a big difference, and sometimes they actually make change.
The only thing I am optimistic about is that maybe with a generational shift, we can finally get rid of the neocons, perhaps. Um,
Oh, that would be so good for the world, wouldn't
I
it?
mean, I know Bill Kristol, who even spoke at one of our conferences. I mean, I grew up in the Philadelphia area. Most people have no idea Netanyahu went to school there. He hung out with the Kristols. Uh, Bill's father, Irving, taught there at Penn State. He was the one who started the whole neocon movement. So I know these people intimately. All right. I argued with Bill Kristol back in the 90s. And he had said, oh, if we remove Saddam Hussein, Assad out of Syria, and Gaddafi will bring peace to the Middle East. I said, you're out of your mind. Have you ever been there? It's tribal. It's not. They don't see themselves as Syrians or Iraqis. It's Sunni versus Shiite versus Kurd. They don't care about the borders. We drew the damn borders.
Well,
He's the one that even wrote the book to go in to
the
Iraq.
only thing that'll clear up peace is more communication, more interaction. Martin Luther King's thing, where you all have to work together, and new generations where they start being forced to do that. That does change and great peace. But I got to ask you, the neocons love the money they make when wars are waged. What can they redirect their energy to and efforts to, so they can make money and not do it for war, but do it for the benefit of people? I mean, that's what we're looking
Look,
at.
that may be the military, industrial complex that they make money from that. These neocons that I know, they don't do it for the money.
Mm.
Um,
What
they
do they
just
do
hate
it for?
Russians. It's a hatred. I think they spent their whole life hating communists, McCarthyism, and all that stuff, right? And communism fell, all right, all by itself. My conclusion is they're just pissed off that they didn't get to shoot anybody.
Well, well, what is okay? So then, why do they? What's with the Middle East? They hate anything that's not them, or what is it? Are you having joint problems, or you're feeling stiff, your knee hurts when you walk? They have found that curcumin has been really good for dealing with inflammation and joint issues. The problem is it doesn't absorb very well. But recently, a pain specialist, Dr. Josh Levitt, figured out a new compound, BCM95 curcumin, that actually absorbs 200 times better than regular curcumin. And that's important because when we can get it to absorb, we can really reduce that inflammation and the issues that you're having in the joints. But he put together an even better formula using that. He added magnesium to soothe tight muscles, bromelain to ease joint stiffness, and boswellia to also reduce the inflammation. Together, it's a really powerful punch for complete joint restoration, not just a Band-Aid. If you are interested in trying it or learning more, go to goldenrevive.com/Sarah. Again, goldenrevive.com/Sarah, or follow the link below.
The Middle East, I think a lot of it has been declassified now, but I think General Wesley Clark even finally came out and said that he went to the Pentagon after 9/11 and was told they were going to go into 7 countries in the Middle East and overthrow the governments. And he had even said, since when does the military not defend the country, but is aggressive to overthrow other governments?
Yeah.
They think, all right, that a lot of those states used to be satellites or appendages to the Soviet Union. So it doesn't matter the Soviet Union fell, they still see that. And that's why they wanted to go into Iraq. General Clark even said, he asked them, he was told they were going into Iraq, and he said, "Oh, so found out that Saddam Hussein was behind 9/11?" They said, "No, we're just going in."
Okay, so
Um,
do they have a deep fear that if the Soviet Russia or the communists get power, that they will lose their power? Is that what it is?
yeah, it's a football game to them. Um, it's look, you can look at uh, even Vietnam. You have Robert McNamara before he died. That's on YouTube. I think trying to clear his conscience. He took us into Vietnam. 58,000 Americans died. How many millions of other people? And he actually says, and you can watch it, he says, we were wrong. We thought Russia was involved. It was just a civil war.
It just
We've gone
was what
into
it was.
Afghanistan. I mean, Iraq, all these things. It was always about Russia. We're in Ukraine, about Russia. Um, they started this whole civil war in Ukraine. We, like I said, I've got McCain, videos that I have them. I put them on my site. He's there, overthrow your government. This is all about you. It's about peace. And then you have Victoria Nuland. Her phone call got leaked.
Leaked.
F the EU. And she's stuck in an interim government. They picked the government, and then they instructed the interim government to attack the Donbass. We started the civil war. All right,
Yeah,
knowing it was to basically get Putin to come in to try to defend the Russians.
well, there's a
That's what
meme
this.
that's out there about her that says, "Watch out for this woman. If she comes to your country, a civil war is going to start."
Yeah, I mean, this is. Look, um, you look at most of the news. It's always anti-Russia. Oh, Putin's going weak. It's going to go, and I'm afraid that Trump's even listening to some of this bullshit. Um,
Well, but Trump, let's
and
talk about that though, because Trump is saying that you can get some of your territory back. He's flipping on a lot of these things.
oh yeah, because he's listening to this propaganda from the neocons.
But how dangerous is that? Or is
Look at
he?
the source. It's the Institute for the Study of War. Who is that? Pick up the rug and look. That's Victoria Nuland's sister-in-law.
Yeah. So, okay, they're always connected this way. So, is Trump being fooled again, or
Uh,
is he playing, everyone talks about 5D chess, which you kind of that gets almost stupid. But, in politics you do have to play some games. How much is he playing games and how much is he just being fooled?
like I said, I think he may think he's negotiating by putting the stakes up so high because he told Zelensky. I mean, you're talking about a 180-degree turn. Ukraine has lost 1.8 million people. And my sources are right from Ukraine. This is not Russian propaganda. All right. Over 10 million have fled the country. 8 million to the EU, and the rest of them off to Russia. We had two employees, one in Donetsk and one in Kiev. They're both now in Berlin. So many people have fled. All right. And so to say that Russia is a paper tiger, really?
Yeah, no.
And you can take back all your land, but also read what he says and take more. Invade Russia is what he's saying. So if I'm going to take what he just said at face value, he is advocating World War III and the invasion of Russia.
that is true because he says you can take more. So taking
Take
more is invading Russia.
Exactly.
Do you think he means that? Or is he a tactic for some other purpose? I know you don't know necessarily, but
I don't know. I would say it's a negotiation that he thinks he's doing. Um, he can't be that stupid. Um, no, what those words mean is World War III. And is this really what you want to do? I mean, I can't say who, but I did speak to somebody in Congress who's very close to him. I thought they would think I was maybe a conspiracy theorist. I said, listen, um, we got to get the hell out of NATO ASAP. They're going to do a false flag to try and drag us in. And the response, I mean, I say what I believe. That's it. I don't really give a shit.
that's why I like
The
it.
response was, we know you're right.
Wow. And this was just recently.
Yeah. That was the Polish thing. The Polish thing was a false flag. And all of a sudden, oh, we were all invaded with drones and look, I spoke to a couple other countries have said nothing flew from Russia over Poland. And what did they immediately say? Oh, okay, fine. Maybe we should do a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Really? So Zelensky is allowed to use long-range missiles to attack Moscow, but Moscow can't fire back. This is what you're saying? You realize that that's World War III. Look, they want war. And I've told this to Washington. I know they are mulling it around. I think they know I'm not a bullshit artist. They're broke. When they're creating the euro, they came to me. So I sat down right from the very beginning in '98. And I told them, we have to consolidate all the debts, take all the debts from all the states, make a federal debt. And that's what, basically Hamilton, did. And then you'll be able to compete with the dollar. And Helmut Kohl, who was the Chancellor of Germany, knew before he died, he said if he allowed the German people to vote, so much for democracy, he would have lost 7-3. So he took Germany into the euro. People were not allowed to vote.
Well, they're not around to vote for anything that the EU does.
No, most people.
I mean, they didn't even pretend.
We're the slaves. That's it. They don't listen to us for anything.
I mean, they don't even pretend with the EU. It's incredible.
It was structured to deliberately prevent democracy. You look at Ursula, head of the EU. Look on Wikipedia. Has she ever stood for an election for anything? Never. She has never been elected.
Who appoints her? Who decides?
They're always appointed.
But who? Who appoints the head?
The heads of the EU appoint her. The people in the back room who make the laws, all appointed. Nobody stands for election. Nobody. All right.
I can't believe that people are even remotely okay with this.
This is what our computer forecasts that the EU is going to collapse
because of
right?
this.
This is
right?
why.
Yeah.
Democracy, the right to vote, is the alternative to force. If you cannot vote these people out, what else is there?
That's right. That anytime you have no option, it's kind of like our justice system being so broken. Anytime you have no option, the only option you have left is force.
Right. I mean, look, I've spoken about our justice system in Congress. I said, if you want to really reform it, call me as a witness. I'll be glad to be there. I never get a phone call.
But until
they're not interested.
Yeah, but until they do, we're only the only resort. I'm not advocating violence, but they're doing that by forcing people to just check out of the system or do.
Yeah,
We
eventually
don't.
it bursts. And you're starting to see this with the EU, because now you just had um, France and Britain, their finance ministers hinted they may need an IMF bailout. Now, why uh, Europe is they need war with Russia as a diversion. They got to divert people's attention from their own problems. This is the death knell of Russia of the EU. France gets in trouble. Okay, what are the traders going to do? They're immediately going to look at all the banks, because the banks, their reserves are not a federal debt. They all have a cornucopia of debts of all member states. To be fair, we got to be equitable. So then they're going to look at who has the most French, and they're going to short that bank. Same way where they were looking at the mortgage-backed securities and Deutsche Bank because of their loan portfolio and derivatives. They will hunt out they're going to look through it. Oh, this bank's got the most. They're the ones who are going to be in trouble. And they're going to short that. So you end up with a contagion. And I suggest reading Herbert Hoover's memoirs, 1931. When all of Europe defaulted, that's what he explained. He said capital acted like a loose cannon on the deck of a ship in the middle of a tempest. It was shooting off in every which direction so fast we couldn't form a committee quick enough to figure out where it was going next. That's a contagion. That's what created the Great Depression. And he describes it very well. All right. For not being a trader.
But are you seeing that same phenomenon now? Is that what you're seeing right now happening?
Yeah, this is the biggest problem we have is Europe, because the structure is unsound. And once that happens, look, a government collapses not by the empirical level of debt. We can have a quadrillion level of debt. Doesn't matter. As long as somebody's in line to buy the next tranche. All right. When the line stops and nobody's there to buy the new debt, that's when you can't pay off the old. And the whole thing comes like crashing down. That's the fact that the UK and France have even hinted they may need an IMF bailout is showing that they're having trouble with selling debt. And these idiots who they cannot chew gum, walk, and run a country at the same time. You're threatening constantly war with Russia. And here, you want to buy some bonds? You had Ursula come up and say that because they can't sell, she's actually proposed, you can Google this, to confiscate people's private assets, and said unused assets, because you're not really investing them. So we could take that cash to fund the war.
Unused, really? Because they view that any asset that's sitting there that's not reinvested is unused. Oh my gosh.
Look, that's really what created the German hyperinflation. Most of the people have misrepresented what happened. They say, oh, because they printed money. No, sorry. The printing came as a result of, not, it was, it's the chicken or the egg story.
Yeah.
In December 22, they could not make the reparation payments. So they confiscated 10% of people's bank accounts, and they issued bonds. You can buy them on eBay. All right. Once they did that, let's say they just took 10% out of your checking account. Are you going to leave it there? He suddenly moved it.
You
So
got
people
it the
began
hell out of
moving their
there.
money out of the country.
Well, let me ask you, there was a bank in, I think it was South Carolina, I don't know, in the East Coast. I think it was South Carolina, where that went, and I covered it. I just can't remember the bank. It was only like an $9 million bank, or $9 million worth of losses. But what they did is they gave them a haircut and they only got like half of their money back. It was the first
Yeah.
bail-in that they did in our country. Was that just a test case to see what would happen? Or what was the
Yes.
deal with that? Okay. You know what I'm
I
talking
mean,
about.
yes. We in Washington they call fly a balloon and see if it floats.
So
If
they
they got
released
away
over
with
these
it,
people and just to see what they would do.
pretty much that's it. It's in in Germany, the people began to move their money out of the country, put it in any other currency but Germany. That's why when Hitler came to power in 1933, he passed a law that it was illegal for a German to have an account outside the country. He was trying to bring the money
Mm.
back. Switzerland, because he did that, in 1934 passes a law that creates the numbered secret accounts.
Oh, okay. And that's what started that. I guess
That's
understanding
that.
that's what started the whole thing.
Yes, all because they couldn't make the payment, so they took 10% of everybody's account.
Okay, but then they also now have offshore accounts. So now what started all this massive offshoring? Because Switzerland isn't the only place anymore. It's almost the offshore accounts.
Switzerland's dead.
Yeah,
Um,
it's the offshore accounts that are really doing this now.
yeah, and the whole removing people from SWIFT it actually began with Christine Lagarde when she was the head of the IMF. She was threatening all the offshore accounts. You're going to give up everybody that has an account there, otherwise, we're going to remove you from the SWIFT system and you won't be able to get any money. She even threatened Vatican
But
that
does
they
it
had to
doesn't
report if somebody donated $1 million to the church. Oh, was that taxed? Where did it come from?
so is this helping the BRICS and cryptos and everything else just supercharge? I mean, are they realizing their own
That's
behavior?
what created the BRICS.
That's
Once you put those sanctions on Russia and you remove them from SWIFT, it was a red flag to the rest of the world. You either do what we say or we'll do this to you. And Blinken, who was a neocon, actually had the audacity to threaten China. You help Russia and we'll remove you from the system. Do you understand the world economy and how this functions? They don't. All they care about is I got to win. And they're very myopic. That's why they used to send me in to explain how everything's connected
It's so
before not,
dangerous. It's so dangerous for them not to understand. And now I do think that with the global reset, we have some players that are just manipulating everything at a high level, but they, the, are the people with bricks smarter than they are?
no, I mean, BRICS left um, largely to create their alternative system to SWIFT, so they can't be locked out. What I can tell you is that China has looked at the US economic model and the Europe. Europe is still using the mercantile ideals from the 18th century. So, for example, Germany is 25% of the EU, it's the richest country. But Google it. The average German has less of a net worth than an Italian. Why? Because they're so afraid of inflation that they keep their taxes very high, regulations on everything. Um, I mean, look, we have advised governments and corporations around the world for decades. I got called in to one German company. I was in London. They said, we're going to have a board meeting here tomorrow. We need you here right away. I said, what's up? You'll find out when you get there. All right. I fly over, go to this board meeting. They appoint our company the advisor to their pension fund. And then everybody's resigning. I said, what the hell's going on here? Is this a Harry Carey meeting or something? And this is socialism at its best. They wanted to lay off, I think it was up to 20% of their workforce. So they have to ask permission from the government to do so. The government came back, okay, fine. And then at the last minute, the government says, oh, it's not fair that you pick who is going to lose their job. You have to make a blanket offer to everybody to voluntarily give up your job. That's fair. What happens? All the people who knew they could get a job right across the street took the 100,000 and left.
Yeah, the good ones leave.
Exactly. So I go
if
to
they
this
get
board
$100,000,
meeting,
yeah.
They are basically resigning, and they said, I can't have my name associated with this company because it's going to go bankrupt, and then I'll never get a job.
Oh, that's even worse.
And when I was at a meeting talking with an IMF, I said, this is the way the economy works. And what they said, we know that's what happened to a company for the same reason in Greece. So, it's just human nature is human nature. If I know I can get a job across the street, you want to give me $100,000 to go take it, I'll take it,
That's right. That's right.
If I can't get a job anywhere, then all right, maybe I'll stay.
So in closing, what would you say is where do you see the money flowing right now that's creating your biggest concern? Just a short break from the program to share with you an amazing peptide to help you lose weight. It's stronger than Ozempic. And why? It's because it not only reduces your appetite, but it also burns fat. These other GLP-1s on the market, they do not burn fat. They just reduce your appetite. This one, retatrutide, is stronger. It's considered a next generation peptide because of that. And man, does this work. I've been using it for 2.5 weeks and I've already lost 11 pounds, and I cut my dose in half because I was losing weight too quickly. And that kind of freaked me out, to be honest. And so I also am taking this 5-amino 1MQ in capsule form. This helps by making sure that you lose fat, not muscle. And so in conjunction, I'm using both of these. This will work whether you have this or not. And I am telling you, it's amazing. If you are interested in getting this, I have the link below, or you can go to sarahwestall.com under shop. You can use the coupon code Sarah to save 10%. If you have questions about your own use, you should either consult your doctor or you can join Dr. Diane's tribe. And I have a link below to that. It is only $1 for the first week. You can ask her any question you want and get all your answers to this, how to take an injectable. And there shouldn't be any fear in doing that. It is easy and straightforward. Go to sarahwestall.com under shop or use the link below, and remember to use coupon code Sarah.
Well, it's clearly leaving Europe, and I've been warning our European clients, you better get the money the hell out of there ASAP, because Europe routinely is very authoritarian to begin with. Besides Ursula threatening to take unused assets of anybody, they're pushing their CBDCs very, very quickly.
Yep.
They're trying to get it by October. I'm not sure. Maybe January is more realistic. But what they will do is then they will cancel the currency.
Is that their way to keep the money in the country? Is that what they're trying to do?
Then you go to a CBDC. They're probably going to even, most likely even outlaw Bitcoin and stuff, because they're not going to win any competition. This is about capital controls.
What's going to happen to the cryptocurrencies when they outlaw all that?
Well, they'll still survive outside Europe, but you're going to look.
Will it decrease the value of the cryptos, or do you think it won't
Probably.
in the
Look,
short run?
Bitcoin, it's not really an investment. It's a money laundering instrument. Um, where it got all its volume from initially, the Chinese figured it out. I could buy Bitcoin here and sell it in America. I got my money out of the country. Um, and then even the central bank of China, when it figured out that it was it was a money laundering instrument, they called them all in. I know Canadians use it to get the money out of Canada. Europeans are doing it. You buy Bitcoin where you're at and you sell it, on the other side. It didn't go through a central bank. It's a great money laundering instrument. That's what Bitcoin's really being used for. It's not this, safe harbor or whatever. Come on, everything goes up and down. Nothing is a store of wealth. Just look at whatever. The stock market goes up, it goes down. All right. What's a store of wealth? Dollar goes up, goes down. Bitcoin goes up, down. There is no such thing.
Well, the closest thing that you can get to a store of wealth is something that maintains its value over a longer period of time, right? So
yeah, gold, real estate, things of this nature. When you end up with like Germany, when you ended up with the hyperinflation, the currency collapses, and then you start a new currency. All right, the Reichsmark in 1925 was backed by real estate, not gold.
mm-hmm.
The
Well, and I know that
tangible assets survive.
The stock market, people have asked me, if you look at the big companies that are on the stock market, their stocks tanked, but they still over time recovered. And as long as the company recovered, yes, yeah,
they still have tangible assets.
Yeah.
I kind of got blamed for the whole takeover boom back in the 80s because simply when you looked at it, I, have the charts on my site. I used to go around and say the stock market's going to go up, and the Dow was like 1,000 at the time. I said it's going to go up to at least 6,000. It sounded crazy. I said, but look, looking at the Dow, and the charts are on my site. In terms of book value, it reached the historic low in 1977. And what was the takeover boom about? The movie Wall Street. They didn't quite get it right, and so I advise most of the takeover guys. Why? Because basically you could buy a company, all right, pay the full value of the stock, sell its assets and triple your money. Was it overpriced? That was the takeover boom. That's really what it was about. Because the stocks were so undervalued, the price in comparison to the assets it held. That's why
they were doing it, because they can parcel off the company and triple their.
Exactly.
They were incented to take over these companies, decimate them, because they can make so much more money selling them. That's sad, actually. Oh, you know what?
The more you look, is that a lot of it, most of it was assets of real estate, things of this nature. I mean, that's how I got to meet Margaret Thatcher and stuff, because we had to do this. Companies would come to me, I'd look at their portfolio, say, okay, fine, multinationals. So you got too much assets in this country, you got to get rid of some of these. We need assets more in this other country to balance things out on a foreign exchange basis. And I happen to have known Margaret Thatcher's personal advisor, Sir Alan Walters, and she had heard this rumor. There's this guy putting companies in Britain. I was putting anybody needed skilled labor, I was putting them in Britain. And he said, yeah, that's Marty. And she says, it's true, this guy? Yeah, I want to meet him. Marty. So I met her, and she was very smart. One of the smartest heads of state she asked me why. And I said, look, if I put them in Germany, pay the person the same wage, all right, it cost me 40% more because of all the socialistic red tape in Germany compared to Britain. She didn't know that. I said, so I put all the car manufacturers in Britain. You got the skilled labor. That's what I need. The airlines, I was putting those in Ireland. So I was reshaping, based upon currency and regulations. We had lawyers in every continent. They were advising us as to, okay, what's the new tax law is going to be in this way or that way. We put people in Montenegro and, Macedonia. I got 25-year guarantees that they wouldn't raise taxes. Some companies wanted that. This is what moves capital. Trump doesn't understand a lot. Why did America lose manufacturing? All the car industries started in Detroit. Detroit kept raising taxes. This is great. We're going to make a shitload of money. They all left. Detroit defaulted in 1937. All right. For Toyota, probably shouldn't have said that, but they asked me to go look at a U.S. plant because the U.S. plant had a higher productivity than in Japan. So I went. All these people thought that they didn't know why I was there. They thought maybe I was there, a head, a guy's going to start chopping heads or something. They have all the papers laid out. I said, I want to go down to the floor. And they look at me, what? I said, I want to go down to the floor. I don't want to look at all your papers. All right. And then they got upset because I started talking to the workers. I was there. One guy pulls the cord and stops the assembly line. So I went over to talk to him, and they were like freaking out. I'm like, God, he's talking to one of them. What's going on? And I asked him, why'd you do it? He says, that door's off a little bit. Look, I saw. So I ended up telling Japan, I said, look, you got to be a wordsmith sometime. I said, you did a brilliant job. You converted the American worker into a very productive person. Great. That was brilliant. You got to do it that way. But what he told me, and when a number of them gathered around me, I asked them why you would never work, none of them wanted to work in a union anymore. I said, why? He says, because all they do is get wages, they don't do anything, and we got to keep putting in all this money and then tell us to strike. He said, here, it's the power. Being a part of a union, you have the power to strike and bring down a company. Here, the Japanese had this little cord. He still has the power to shut the thing, but for a positive reason rather than negative. And all of them said they would never, ever go back to a union again. So it's human nature.
I love that
People
story.
want to feel that they are doing
I love that story. If we could just grasp some of that, how much better would things be of what people need? They need to feel like they're actually contributing to something positive. That's just
Right.
the basic thing. They want to feel like their life matters.
Our problem is that you have people in the bureaucracy that they see this as their meal ticket. And change? You want me to change? You're threatening my salary, my pension, this, that, like USAID, or this is the problem with NATO. NATO was created against the communists and the Warsaw Pact. When that fell, why do we need NATO? So they keep saying, oh, Putin wants to invade. Really? They use the same scenario as if he's Khrushchev.
They can't get out of their
Khrushchev,
mindset.
Yes, because if I saw the internal memos, they were concerned that all the money was going to climate change. And they said, how do we remain relevant to keep their salaries and pensions? All right, so
But see, that's my point, though.
Putin wants to invade.
But that's my point. That gets to my earlier question where how do we keep them, work them? I don't want to have a bloated bureaucracy, but if we could get people shifted into other meaningful work, then we might not have as much. I mean, that's always the case, right? Get people shifted into build elsewhere so that we don't have this entrenched BS always going on.
Yeah, it's look, I encountered that in trying to deal with Washington myself. You know, I had written a letter to Reagan. I said, this is crazy. Oh, you'll never be called again because you went out of committee. I said, fine, I don't give a shit. Goodbye. you know, um, but everybody then knew that. So then because of that, then they have to get me in for 87.
That's awesome. So, would you advise Trump or his team if they asked you?
I would at least sit down. Okay. My concern is that he is surrounded by neocons, etc. And people have vested interests. Um,
But my understanding is that Trump's
I would
willing
sit
to
down,
listen.
but I doubt that he would call me.
My understanding is that Trump's willing to listen to people who will tell him what they're not going to just tell him what he wants to hear. He's willing to listen to other opinions and other things to get a better picture of what's going on. That's my
Yeah,
understanding. But he's
state.
being hidden, like they're not
Yes.
allowing those voices to even get to him.
This is the deep state. When a congressman leaves, the people there basically just go to the next one coming in. All right. You can write a letter to your congressman. Good luck if it ever gets to him. It's not going to get to him unless, first of all, you got to pass all the gatekeepers. And it's gotten much, much worse. I mean, in the 90s, if I wrote a letter to the Secretary of Treasury, like I did to Rubin, I immediately get a response. You don't get that anymore. It's like, oh no, we don't. Do you really want to show them this? It's so entrenched.
They work in a bubble now, though, and that's a very
Yeah,
dangerous thing. And
it is.
yeah, they need
It's
to hear.
97. Rubin was out saying the same thing that started in 87. Oh, lower the value of the dollar to help trade. And I wrote him a letter. I said, look, I'm the one that was called in on this. You really do this, you're going to cause a crash again. I got a letter back. Oh, okay, fine. What happened within 3 months? You had the 1997 Asian currency crisis, all currency crisis. Then I got called in by China. It's I've at least had a front row seat to all this stuff.
That is incredible, right? You at least get to say that your life was interesting, right?
Yes.
And I have a feeling it's going to stay interesting for the next 10 years.
It has definitely been interesting for sure. It gets frustrating from the standpoint that I get called into it's almost the same stupid mistake over and over again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, lowering the value of the dollar to help trade lowers the value of everything else in your country. Do you understand that? yeah.
Well, okay, so if other countries want your advice or other big corporations, they can go to armstrongeconomics.com. How do they reach you? How do they reach your team? And what
they
is
can
it?
send an email in there. My team are not the deep state. They know what,
You'll give people a different perspective. You'll give people an informed, data-driven perspective on what's going on in global economics.
We're all in the same boat. It's as JFK said, when they criticized him about trying to create a relationship with Russia, he says, we all still breathe the same air, which is true.
And we all bleed red.
And everybody will act out of their own self-interest. And everybody will think in terms of their own currency. So if you go to Greece and they quote a price, you're going to convert it in your head to dollars to see if it's fair or not. The currency is your mental yardstick. We don't really look at it that much. That's
It's like the
because
metric
Europeans
system.
coming here,
Yeah.
you're gonna give him a price in dollars and he's gonna convert it to euros. That's how we judge value. So the money is more than just a paper currency. It's a yardstick of value. And that's how we judge everything. And everybody will act out of their own self-interest.
It's pretty simple once you narrow it down to that. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to have you on a regular basis if you don't mind, because your people really get a lot out of these conversations. So I appreciate it so much, Martin. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. You asked intelligent questions. So
Doing something right, I guess.